This is Scott Schober. I'm the president and CEO of Berkeley Varitronics, also author and cyber expert. And I'm honored to take a little bit of time to speak to you. And I'm here with EC Council University, and I greatly appreciate them having me present here. So thank you for joining. I'm going to be talking about stopping scammers one skimmer at a time. And throughout this, I'd like to break down a little bit more what skimmers actually are. And that's really how we're going to start out our discussion, talking about what are skimmers, because you probably heard about them. And we think about the world of credit card. We all use credit cards. Any place that we place our credit card or our debit card is prone to have skimmers. And what skimmers really are, essentially, these are homemade magnetic striped card readers that are installed by cyber criminals, and they're hidden right alongside legitimate card readers. So when you think about, if you take your credit card and you swipe it into a traditional POS point of sale terminal, the magnetic head in there will read your credit card information from track 1 and track 2 that are encoded on the mag stripe on the back of your credit card. Now, the skimmer by cyber criminals is basically a second micro head, a second read head that's placed in very close proximity, and it's covertly hidden inside of where the card reader actually is, alongside of it. And what it's doing is stealing that track 1 and track 2 data, the magnetic information off of your card, which is your card number and your expiration information, your name. And it's actually recording that information inside of a buffer. And if you look at the pictures that I have there in the slide deck under what are skimmers there, you could see a couple different types of skimmers, and I'll show several different examples through this discussion. But the one on the left there next to a coin there, just to give you a sense of the size, has to fit inside of where the footprint of an actual credit card or debit card could slide into the reader. So it's micro thin, it's super thin metal. You could see there a coin cell battery that's actually integrated in there, and an actual circuit that's then protected. And what that is basically a microprocessor and a buffer memory that will store and record every time a card goes in there, and the little read head reads all that track 1 and track 2 data. It puts into the buffer all of the credit card or debit card's data. And these skimmers typically can hold hundreds and hundreds of stolen, compromised credit card or debit cards every time somebody swipes it into the machine, unbeknownst to the actual consumer, the end user. And that's what's so scary about it. So it'll allow transactions to continue to work. So if I'm going to slide my card in and, for example, I'm pumping gas, put my card into the actual reader, it will copy my track 1 and track 2 data, the cyber criminals with their skimmer, but it'll also allow the transaction to go through. And why is that so important? From a cyber criminal's perspective, there's no suspicion at all from the consumer. I'm pumping gas as normal, and $20, $30 comes off my credit card. There's no alert, there's nothing else. So I don't even realize anything about it. So in a sense, the skimmer is invisible to the consumer. And that's where there is huge concern. Skimmers are very tricky to actually locate and see because they're covert. They're hidden inside of the point of sale terminal. So we need to realize that and be aware. Now, to the right of that skimmer there, I show a picture of another type of skimmer that's become very popular. It's called a Bluetooth skimmer. Same basic principles apply. The difference is it doesn't have to be squeezed or fit into the actual neck of where your card goes in. Instead, it gets plugged in with a Molex connector there on top of the actual card reader. Therefore, cyber criminals need to get access inside of the point of sale terminal. They need to get access inside of the gas pump or in the top of the ATM machine. And I'll get into some more of those details a little bit further in the presentation. But cyber criminals, we have to realize, have advanced from the physical electromechanical type of traditional skimmers and deep neck skimmers that they slide in to a Bluetooth one. What are the advantages of using a Bluetooth skimmer? Well, obviously, what comes to mind, once the cyber criminal places the skimmer inside of where the card is read, they only have to place it inside the ATM, the gas pump, the point of sale terminal a single time. They do not have to come back and retrieve it to get the stolen credit card information off of it. From a cyber criminal's perspective, that's very advantageous because they don't risk getting caught. It's risky enough to put it in the first time with a traditional skimmer, but now to have to go back and try to remove it safely, it could be challenging. So the Bluetooth modern skimmers alleviate that concern. Once they install it, they leave it. And instead, cyber criminals, all they have to do is come within about a 75-foot proximity from where the Bluetooth skimmer is installed. For example, if it's at an ATM, maybe it's a little kiosk outside of your bank that you normally use, and a Bluetooth skimmer is installed in there. Now all they need to do is pull up in the parking lot or even the adjacent parking lot. Cyber criminal opens up their laptop and they establish a connection to that Bluetooth skimmer. Once they pair, then they can download the day's stolen cards. Once they download those cards on their computer, they're off and running. So they, again, don't need to get to close proximity of where that skimmer is placed inside the ATM, which is very powerful from a cyber criminal's perspective. They then in turn will go home and they will take those stolen credit cards and they'll burn fresh cards. They'll take blank credit cards with a blank mag stripe on the back. They'll take those stolen credit cards, parse the information out, and they will actually burn a fresh card. Now what in essence they have is a copy of what a consumer's card is. When you as a consumer put it into the gas pump, the ATM, or swipe it on a POS system, that data is now on this fresh burned card, and now they can go shopping on your nickel. And that is extremely easy to do. To actually buy a credit card swiper, it's something that you can buy. We purchased one here for under $200 on eBay or on Amazon. They're sold. And again, they're legitimate because many people need to burn credit cards that are honest consumers and have a business. And that's important for us to realize. Well, I want to focus on a couple key takeaways, what we'll get from this discussion here, just so these are standouts in your mind if you're new to skimmers and new to how this information is sold on the dark web, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the key takeaways are, what are skimmers, which we kind of just started to getting into, and we're discussing these different types of skimmers, and I'll share some more information on that. How do they actually get the skimmers inside the point of sale terminal, inside the ATM, inside the gas pumps? We'll discuss that a little bit, and some of the scams that they actually use. Also, I'll share some brief points on how to stay safe. For you as a consumer, a user of credit cards, how do you stay safe from skimmers? And the information on the dark web is, I think, very important. Understanding how they get this information, these stolen credit cards, and actually market and sell them, and why it's so popular. So we're going to delve into those things a little bit more shortly. Well, again, we're talking about different types of skimmers, and I wanted to do was show you a few physical skimmers, what I call in the wild. And again, these are in gas pumps and ATM machines, so we could appreciate it a little bit further. First, it's important to know we're going to talk about on the far right, if you're facing the screen there, the types of skimmers. You see the one with the blue cable coming up. That's an example of a Bluetooth skimmer inside of a traditional gas pump. If you notice, you see some of the gray heat shrink around the base of it. That's the actual skimmer housed in there to protect the circuitry. And again, it's got a microprocessor with some memory, a buffer in there to hold all the stolen credit cards. And you notice the blue ribbon cable with the standard connector, that is physically plugged right inside the top of the point of sale reader, where the credit card goes in or the debit card goes into the gas pump in this particular case. We're looking at it from the back side, from the outside, what it actually looks like. So what does it tell you right away? How easy it is to place a Bluetooth skimmer inside of a gas pump. But you might wonder, okay, great, it's a gas pump. How do I get inside of a gas pump? Well, in the United States and many other countries, there are actually generic keys to get inside the gas pumps. Inside in the United States, there's over 1 million gas pumps from coast to coast. And to get into those gas pumps, over 90% of those, there are 6 keys, generic keys that will allow you to open up the front of the gas pump. And why is that? Well, because law enforcement may have to get in there, station owners may have to get in there, petroleum companies may need to get in there to service, national weights and measures have to get in there on a regular basis to make sure that everything is running smooth and the dispensing of gas is legal and the right amount versus the amount of money that's taken in. So there's many, many hands that need to get into a gas pump, as well as general maintenance, replacing the printer paper, so on and so forth. Now, these generic keys you can buy on eBay. They may cost you under $50 to get the 6 generic keys. And guess what? A cyber criminal could pull up to a gas pump, take this key, open up the front end of it that houses where the credit card is read, and it takes approximately 15 seconds to plug in this Bluetooth skimmer as depicted in the picture. Now you close up the gas pump, close the door, and guess what? The Bluetooth skimmer is powered. And again, it can now make a copy of every single card that's inserted in the front of that gas pump. The average Bluetooth skimmer in a gas pump in the United States nets about $114,000 stolen before it's detected. That is an immense amount of money that is being made. Yearly estimates are over $2 billion just stolen from skimmers. Again, many are not reported. There's a lot of them out there in the wild that are unknown, so it's a very conservative estimate. But it helps us to appreciate just skimmers alone, how big of a problem it is with cyber criminals constantly inserting them. As fast as they're being found, one day they sneak in at night or during another time when nobody's looking and plug another Bluetooth skimmer in, or they may even have somebody at a particular gas station that's on the take. In other words, they're paid to turn their head, walk away while they're installing Bluetooth skimmers. Again, stealing credit card information and credit card fraud for millions of consumers each and every year. It's a terrible crime. It is extremely difficult and takes a lot of physical investigation to actually find it, or using advanced tools to actually hunt down and locate when there is a Bluetooth skimmer that is installed. Now think about it from the petroleum industry standpoint and from the gas stations standpoint. Every time somebody puts a credit card, whether it's legitimate or fraudulent, and they're buying gas, money is made. So there's no strong incentive for them to report the crime, because the second that a crime is reported in a gas pump with a skimmer, it becomes a federal investigation. The gas pump and or station may be closed during the investigation, and that is lost revenue. The average gas pump, for each gallon of gas that's pumped, they only make about 5 or 6 cents. So they have to pump a lot of gas and to bring in enough revenue to keep the station alive and become profitable. So anything that could disrupt it, such as a Bluetooth skimmer or traditional skimmer, could be a big, big problem and cause havoc. So there's not a lot of incentive to report it, and the laws are not enforced from a federal standpoint to update the pumps to chip and pin, which is more secure. What I always ask people to do is turn your credit card over, even if it is a chip and pin card. Does it have a mag stripe on the back? 9 out of 10 times you'll probably say, well, yes, it does. Well, if it has a mag stripe on the back, even if it's a chip and pin card that you say is more secure, once you stick that card in, that mag stripe will be read by a second read head or Bluetooth skimmer, and then it'll be compromised or stolen. Now, shifting over for a moment to ATMs, which again, this is a huge international problem. Oftentimes with ATMs, there's a second component besides just your credit card being stolen. Now, ATMs, again, both methods, traditional deep neck skimmers are slid down where your credit card normally goes in, or they'll open up the top of the ATM, either through somebody they know, a friend at the bank, a service technician, or again, they have a generic key for the various types of ATMs. There's a lot of generic keys that open only the top half of the ATM. Now, again, most people think, well, where is the money in an ATM? The money is kept in a safe, a secure safe at the bottom of the ATM. It would take over 3 hours just to drill a small hole in it with a carbide bit to try to compromise the safe and get the physical money out. Cyber criminals don't have that time to do that. Instead, they're more ingenious. They go to the top of the ATM where paper is changed and cards get jammed and all the electromechanical parts are, where there's more of a generic key that you can have access to it. And that's where they'll oftentimes insert a Bluetooth skimmer there when they do get access to it. And if they could do that, then again, it works exact same principle as a gas pump skimmer as we talked about. However, there's another component that's kind of important, whether you're using a traditional skimmer or a Bluetooth skimmer, is for an ATM machine, typically someone's using a cash card, a debit card. They also need to know the PIN. In a sense, it's like two-factor authentication. When we're logging on with a password, we enter our username, our password, and we need another factor that maybe it's a special one-time code that's texted to us, that's called into us, that's emailed to us. That additional factor makes it more safe. Now think about it this way. With an ATM, they were smart initially years ago, decades ago, when they created and developed ATMs to have that additional factor. Besides just the debit card going to the machine, you need a unique PIN code that only you know. So cyber criminals realize this, and what did they do? They've inserted either a pinhole camera that could wirelessly, Bluetooth typically, wirelessly send that information to the cyber criminal that's, again, sitting in close proximity, so that when you put your card in, they will see you enter in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for example, if that was your PIN code, which I wouldn't recommend. They would physically see that, and then afterward, they would take the data, parse it, and bring together the card numbers for track 1 and track 2, along with that associated PIN. They could burn a fresh debit card, go to another ATM, knowing your PIN and knowing your debit card credentials, stick it in there, withdraw all the money in your account, and then run. Another way to do it, and you'll see the top left picture right under types of skimmers, you see there a keypad, and what do they actually create is an electromechanical keypad that sits on top of the actual keypad. Why is this such a threat? Because that electromechanical keypad is placed over, and if you're not paying close attention and you actually enter your PIN number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it is recording that in a buffer. And again, just like the pinhole camera, it will send that via Bluetooth what your actual PIN code is, and make a corollary later to the compromised card that was stuck in the machine with the actual PIN that you entered in there. So you see how powerful that is. Once they have those two pieces of information, they can go to another ATM and empty out your money. Underneath that keypad picture, you see something there, and it's the inside of a recently found skimmer. And this is a next generation skimmer, and it's called a cellular skimmer. And what these traditionally work on is 3G, third generation technology using GSM, which is a very popular standard used around the globe. It is being ended soon in the United States for 4G and into 5G technology soon, but still vastly used GSM around the globe. So it'll still be here for another few years until they actually eliminate it and migrate over to full 4G and then 5G technology. And what that type of skimmer simply does is, again, when the card is entered in, there's another little read head on that will actually read the card data. And instead of sending it via Bluetooth or being stored in a buffer to be retrieved later, it will actually send a text message with the stolen credit card. Now think about that. From a cyber criminal's perspective, you could be sitting on a beach in Tahiti with your cell phone, and you'll be being texted throughout the day. Every time somebody makes a transaction with their credit card through that cellular skimmer, you will receive an SMS text with the credit card information on it there for you to go internet shopping or to burn a fresh credit card and steal some innocent consumer's money. Huge threat. The other two central pictures here are how they will embed in a plastic bezel, typically printed by a 3D printer, a micro head that reads the actual card when it's inserted. And usually they're put on top of a traditional plastic bezel that's already on the ATM machine. And these plastic bezels are printed to look just like the other one, and they're epoxied on there. And they, again, have a small lithium battery on there, a magnetic read head, a small microprocessor, and a buffer to record all of these stolen credit cards. So again, very difficult to see. Now, what are some ways to get these in more detail on the installation methods? Look a little bit closer in the top left picture. We're just talking about a traditional ATM. Here you could see an investigator with the glove on pulling off the bezel that fit right on top of the other bezel, the actual normal bezel that's on the machine. And if you look toward the bottom of it, you could see the battery, the circuitry, and the read head and a tiny cable. So it's extremely small and very, very easy to hide on a traditional ATM, especially if it's a small kiosk ATM and it's not well lit. So I always encourage people, if you are using an ATM to dispense cash, use a bank that you trust, that you go to normally, that's very well lit, that has good security in the area, security cameras, a presence of people walking by. When you do enter your PIN, as I mentioned, if they do have potentially a pinhole camera, covering the keypad, entering it will help where there is a pinhole camera trying to steal and take your card information, your PIN information. That's important to do. Different if there's an actual keypad, so you want to look closely at the keypad to see if there's a keypad overlay put on top of the traditional keypad, just to use concern. The picture to that right there, it's kind of in the middle of the screen there under installation methods. You'll see a piece of plastic, and that's where the pinhole camera is connected up to a Bluetooth module that would actually record video of you typing in the PIN code. Again, why it's so important: if you're entering a PIN code, use your hand to block it and defer that so they cannot steal that information, because the card information alone is limited and not very useful without that magical PIN. Bottom picture again is just a close-up of yet a different type of Bluetooth skimmer. There it's a gray ribbon cable that's plugged right into where the credit card is red, and in this case you can see it looks like it's inside of an ATM machine there where that Bluetooth skimmer was plugged into. And the far right picture there with the man with the blue glove, there, that's the back end of a gas pump that again a Bluetooth skimmer was found there in the wild. Now I want to share just a few other things to help you keep safe, because this is an important part of this presentation. Since many of these skimmers are covert, they're hidden, we have to realize and think like a cyber criminal so we could stay safe and not fall victim. First, let's look at the bottom right picture there. You'll see an arrow where it says skimmer. You see the picture to the right, that protrudes out of a point of sale, traditional point of sale terminal. It could be anything. It could be a vending machine, could be a gas pump, could be an ATM. Anywhere where a credit card or debit card is taken and it's slidden in. And if you see there, the one on the right side is a little bit shorter. The one on the left side where it shows the big red arrow with skimmer, that is a small module that's basically a skimmer. And again, what does it have in there? Right at the tip of the arrow, that's where the read head sits. So when you slide your card in vertically, it is reading the magnetic stripe. So why am I sharing this with you? If you look carefully every time you're about to put your card in, and use caution, and if you see anything extra protruding or it looks like it's added on, it is likely a physical skimmer that's been added on outside of where your card is actually scanned. So that's a good tell right there. A lot of times we're told jiggle it. It may feel loose, it may break off. If it does, then stop right away, report it to law enforcement. It may be secured really well. If I see something like that, I would not use it. I would instantly say, caution, stop right here, because high probability there's a skimmer in there. So that's just a good practical best practices from credit card use. We move up to the point of sale terminal there, which many of us find in a convenience store, a mall, wherever we're shopping. What I want to point out here is a telltale sign that a cyber criminal may have put a skimmer in the machine. And this would be a traditional type of credit card skimmer where you slide the card in the side of the machine. What's telling me that it could be in there? Well, the giveaway is actually this: no chip yet, the sign that's put on the terminal. Why? Because what many cyber criminals have done is they found their way into retail stores, anywhere where credit cards are accepted, and they pop open the top bezel by removing a few screws from the back. They'll insert their skimmer, place this back on, and they'll put a little note there, no chip yet. And I've seen this myself firsthand at a convenience store that I was shopping at. And I said, what is this? And they said, I don't know. Somebody was here and they said that the chip reader's not working, so just swipe your card on the side. Red flag goes up, stop immediately. Why? Because likely there is a skimmer in there that will steal your credit card. So just some common sense that you got to think about. A third area I wanted to point out how to stay safe and how to spot it and think like a cyber criminal. If we think about getting into an ATM machine, I told you it could be laborious to slide a skimmer, a deep neck skimmer down an ATM slot where your card goes in. It could be challenging to get the right key and have access, electromechanical access, to open up and put a Bluetooth skimmer inside of an ATM machine, or drill a hole and insert it in and put a sticker over the cover or a bezel to hide it so it doesn't look like you actually got an ATM machine. And ATM manufacturers are getting better and better at making it difficult for cyber thieves to get in there. So what have cyber thieves done? They've taken it one step further, and they don't even put a skimmer in the ATM machine to compromise your ATM card. How? Well, look at the picture. There's a traditional vestibule there outside of any bank, a generic bank, let's just say, and you see an ATM inside. Before you get inside the ATM, oftentimes what happens? You have to, especially after hours and the bank is closed, you have to insert your debit card into the door to unlock a solenoid, which unlocks it, not to get into the bank, but get into the vestibule where the ATM is. So you're secure, it's well lit, you can make your transaction, deposit, get your money out, whatever the case may be. And if you see there where the red arrow is under how to stay safe, and that's next to the door frame there, a little slot, that's where your card goes in. Guess what? Cyber criminals will take apart the door frame when no one's looking, insert a credit card skimmer there, either traditional style with just a read head and a buffer that stores the stolen credit cards, or they'll install a Bluetooth skimmer in there that will, again, compromise the credit cards for everybody entering into that ATM vestibule, the entrance to the bank. That's ingenious. You would never suspect that the skimmer would be put in there. When they do regular maintenance at the ATM, opening, closing it, looking to make sure it hasn't been modified, checking the bezels, checking the inside for Bluetooth skimmers, they'll never spot a skimmer that's actually hidden in the door frame. So now banks need to be alerted to that, and I'm trying to always educate them, make sure that they check carefully on a regular basis that there's not a skimmer installed in the frame, as well as in the ATM. And that's important, that education from a consumer side and also from law enforcement and the bank side, so they can regularly check that to ensure that there's no problems. Well, next I just want to spend a few minutes to understand, or help you understand, the dark web. What is the dark web, first of all, and why am I even talking about it? Well, the dark web is important to talk about because that's the conduit how cyber criminals sell stolen credit cards. I've done several investigative reports going into the dark web and finding stolen credit cards and reporting it to law enforcement, as well as sharing with the media outlets so they can alert consumers that their credit cards have been compromised. Now, what is the dark web? It was a nice picture there of the iceberg that's often used for illustrative purposes. We think about the surface web, where we may go on and do a search term. We go on to a Google or Bing or any other popular search engine. We enter a search term. That's done on the surface web, and that's all indexed by search engines, so it's easily to find information, track it down to a specific URL. The surface web roughly represents 2/10 of the internet, and it's estimated to be all on the surface. Now there's the deep web. You see the iceberg under the water. That's estimated to be more than 500 times larger than the surface web. So the deep web is 99% of the internet that you can't Google search, that you can't go on Bing and do a search. They're unindexed web databases, records, all that type of information. Now within the deep web is actually another sliver. It's called the dark web. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. The dark web is where illegal information is often hidden, where information is encrypted, where cyber criminals can sell stolen credit cards. identity theft records, patient records, personal login credentials, drugs, guns, child trafficking, everything illicit that they could work in that area. And in fact, illicit marketplaces on the dark web, it's estimated to generate about 500,000 US dollars per day. So it's a fair amount of transactions that are happening each and every day on the dark web. And it's important for us to remember, why do cyber criminals sell things on the deep web? Why don't they just have an online store on the surface web like many companies have? Well, obviously law enforcement would move in and shut them down. The advantage of using the dark web is that the information is encrypted, number one. Number two, the information is bounced around to different areas around the world, so it's hard to actually track down the computer or the servers where the information is actually housed, where the transactions are happening. And again, I mentioned the information is encrypted. And one third element to add to make it easy to work in the cyber criminal underworld of the dark web is that they typically will take and receive payment via cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, which is digital currency. It's encrypted, it's secure. I won't go into the details of it, but it works with a general ledger and allows users, buyers and sellers, to remain anonymous. So they have multiple things in that world. They're using a Tor browser, which has got encrypted sites. The sites can move around frequently. We know if we wanted to type XYZ company, we know the specific address, the URL to type it in on the web to go there on the surface web. Well, if we don't know the exact web address in the dark web, and we don't have a search engine that works down there effectively, it could be difficult to find. So there's been some engines that have been created and browsers called the Tor browsers, so you could effectively use, so you can navigate and find things on the dark web. Again, most of it buying and selling illicit things. Doesn't mean everything on the dark web is illegal that's going on. I don't want to misrepresent that, but it's important to realize that many of the things on there are illegal and are illicit, and we need to be careful. The screen on the far right there where it says 1A quality credit card store, there's an example of an actual screen when I went on there, and you could see it'll actually tell you these are stolen, compromised credit cards, usually from skimmers, gas pumps, ATMs, point of sale terminals at retail outlets, and they'll actually post different cards on the website there, and they'll actually give those to you to try. So if you're a serious buyer and you want to buy 1,000 or 10,000 stolen credit cards, they will give you a card and they'll tell you what the limit, the credit limit is on the card and the cost of it. So you could see in this particular case, $100 US for, around $2,000 a limit there, up to 100 euros for another one down at the bottom there, and they claim they're verified. So these are test cards. A lot of times you'll see transactions on your bank statement and you'll see $1 came out or something else. That's likelihood that somebody stolen your credit card, put it on the dark web, and a thief is trying to run $1 to see if your card actually works, to prove, hey, this stolen list is legitimate, before they actually will pay money and buy those stolen cards. So it's, again, important for us to remember just some of the things that are going on the dark web, and that way we could be safe. You can get a dark web email scan to see if your email or your credentials or your credit card ends up on the dark web, and I encourage that, and there's many companies that actually provide that type of service. Feel free to reach out to me afterward, and I'd be happy to share some of those companies' information where you can get a dark web scan to see if your information has been compromised and ends up down there, because that's important for us to do on a regular basis. I do it on a regular basis just to make sure that my information is never compromised. And finally, that bottom picture there is just a picture of a credit card burner, again, that you could buy on eBay, on Amazon, a lot of stores where cyber thieves use that to actually burn credit cards or debit cards. So again, I really appreciate EC Council University for giving me this time. It's a very important topic. I hope a few of these tips I shared with you were beneficial for keeping you safe in this very unsafe world, and that you could be a little more cautious about skimmers, Bluetooth skimmers, cellular skimmers going forward, and I'd love to hear some of your thoughts, comments, and any questions. Here's some of my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. You could even submit a question through my website or send me a message through Twitter. Be happy to respond to you. And again, thank you so much for spending some time with the Cyber Talks, and greatly appreciate EC Council University for all they're doing in their education, especially in the world of cybersecurity. And again, I'm Scott Schober, President and CEO of Berkeley Varitronics Systems, author and cyber expert, thanking you and asking you, please stay safe.